Lieutenant Colonel Tommy Waller recently retired from the United States Marine Corps after 2 decades of service and currently serving as the president and CEO of the nonprofit Center for Security Policy, where I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 75. Over the past 10 years of my service in the nonprofit Center for Security Policy, we've worked policy related to electric grid security with a specific emphasis on electromagnetic spectrum threats, which I know is what we were talking about. I've had the opportunity to brief President Trump before he was a president, numerous members of his administration, the Biden administration as well, Secretary Granholm, and her advisory board on numerous occasions. And throughout that 10-year period, what I can tell you is that it had become the policy of the U.S. government to protect against electromagnetic spectrum threats. 6 years ago, last week, President Trump signed an executive order on that. The bad news is that we have almost nothing to show for it. And during that period of time, I did serve on the U.S. Air Force Electromagnetic Defense Task Force that you asked about, and worked this both in a classified and non-classified environment. The other bad news is that it's 100% certain that the North American electric grid will fail, 100%. At some point, we don't know, and that's because of the solar weather threat. The good news is that it's avoidable. There is affordable, tested solutions to protect it. Solar weather won't destroy everything, but what it will destroy can be protected. And over the last 10 years, that technology has been proven. That's the good news. And the other good news is that this bill gives the state of Texas the opportunity to evaluate those risks, the threats, the hazards, and then evaluate the solutions in such a way that Texas can lead while the federal government has failed. I'm here to answer any questions you have about both the threats and the solutions and the policy that I suggest Texas take to protect against those threats. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Grab the microphone.
Chairman Schwartner, members, I'm Chuck DeVore with the Texas Public Policy Foundation here in support of SB 75. I think, Mr. Chairman, you certainly raised a very interesting question about some of the catastrophic effects that may be experienced, whether natural or man-made, especially in the EMP arena. What my colleague, Lieutenant Colonel Waller, recently mentioned a few moments ago about the solutions, I think it's important to be specific. What we're talking about here is something called neutral blocking devices. Nationally, you could install them for about $4 billion. Here in Texas, it breaks down to about $20 per capita. That's a one-time expense, Mr. Chairman.
$4 billion?
No, that's nationally. No. So here in Texas, the per capita expense would be about $20, roughly $500 million. So a little less than $20 per capita could fix the problem. So it's not one of these things where it's so catastrophic you're like, well, we could never really prevent it. In fact, there are reasonably cost solutions.
And what are we preventing with that?
This is the destructive effects of EMP, whether from a Carrington event or from a man-caused, disaster, purposeful. And Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to understand that even today you have these large-scale exercises around Taiwan by China where Admiral Paparo, the commander of Indo-Pacific Command, says that what the Chinese are doing are not exercises, it's rehearsals. And if something were to kick off, you could pretty much guarantee that there's going to be some degree of action against the U.S. grid system. So anything that we can do now would be prudent in preparation. It's affordable, and it's proven, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. Please state your name. Begin.
My name is Don Brown. I'm a retired engineer. I've been working with the Secure the Grid Coalition for about 3 years on this issues, the same hazards that SB 75 covers, and I support this bill strongly. SB 75 lays out a pragmatic approach, a framework to collaborate among stakeholders. This is very important to get things done quickly. Texas can move much quicker to address the understanding of the protection standards and the costs of a solution. And so the commission enables that to happen. For the last 3 years, I've been working without a commission on these issues, and you don't have the support. You're trying to do it on your own. So that's a reason for the commission in my book. The example that I give you on page 2 of the handout describes the 2 different problems we face and I'm using this example because this is the primary issue I've been working on, is the EMP and solar weather. You can see that the problems we face on E1 on the left, it destroys electronics. And if you look on the right, it destroys the transformers. That's the E3 pulse. So the DOD recommendation on that E3 pulse is 100 times greater than what we currently have using for compliance in Texas, 100 times greater. So page 3 shows pictures of the equipment that Senator Hall mentioned, that Chuck has mentioned that actually exceeds these DOD standards that recently came out. The one on the left is installed at the Tennessee Valley Authority. It's a football-sized transformers, 500 kV transformer that has that neutral ground blocker on that, protecting it. May I continue just to finish it?
Yes, you have another 20, 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. The lead time on these transformers is 4 to 6 years. There's no recovery. The refrigerator-sized digital substation on the right is to protect against the E1 events. This is what Senator Hall was talking about when he says they've shrunken it down, they're using fiber optics. You're looking at one of those right there that was developed by CenterPoint and Siemens. And so to implement these entire, the protection for the entire ERCOT backbone would cost less than 80 cents per residential customer. And I've done this math using the CREZ model that we have
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
over 33 years of amortization.
All three of y'all spoke of electromagnetic pulse threats, and they're certainly there. But going back to my original questions of the author, this bill has to do with all threats. It's not just and then also an evaluation of the resilience of municipalities in the state in the following areas: emergency services, communication, water and sewer, healthcare systems, financial services, energy systems, transportation systems. And then it has a report that would be done. But how would these 7 individuals, and of course others can be brought in, strategize as to really the most pressing? I guess everyone has an opinion, right? And I guess mine would be, sabotage and man-made things that disrupt operations, whether they're actual destruction and against sabotage of substations or an actual control center or something like that, or then the other concerns of the other risks associated with the grid. People seem to be very focused on EMP, and I don't know when that storm is coming that's going to kill the entire world, I guess, or North
Doesn't
America.
have to. No, sir, it doesn't have to kill anybody if we protect
I
against it.
mean, when's it going to happen?
We don't know. And the focus, Mr. Chairman, on electromagnetic spectrum threats is there's a reason for it. And that's because that's the specific threat that has been willfully ignored by the federal government thus far. And it's also not been addressed by the state of Texas thus far. That's why the focus. Mr. Chairman, your focus on sabotage is appropriate. People's Republic of China.
Cybersecurity too. I mean, we
Absolutely.
hear about China and what they're doing.
So the reason why
more likely to do cybersecurity or an EMP pulse attack?
they're likely to do both. Mr. Chairman, a commission like this, specifically designed to allow its members to have classification, clearances, would give them the ability to be able to receive briefings on exactly those threats, the cyber threats, supply chain threats. There's numerous methods by which the PRC can sabotage the grid we have now immediately. But we also seek to deter those adversaries. The focus on solar weather, for the committee to understand, is because we cannot deter the sun. And this is something that is absolutely we're able to protect against. So it is literally a ticking time bomb that if we do not protect those transformers, like Don said, 4 to 6 years lead time, catastrophic damage from the ground-induced currents, with known and tested solutions. Listen, I begged the Secretary of Energy and explained 1/3 of 1% of the Biden infrastructure bill would have fixed this nationwide. And the federal government didn't do it. And what I'm pleading with you now is to make the decision to allow members of this state to get those threat briefings and understand the gravity of it, and then get briefings from the people who have the solutions to make the decisions that are necessary to protect the people of Texas.
Don't you think TDUs that are operating electric systems in the state of Texas, transmission, distribution, utilities, if they had great concern about EMPs, that they would be asking for it in their resiliency plans and the rates that could be charged, basically to put in place what is being described by some of y'all regarding the hardening of the grid, if they thought it was and of course, a commission has 7 members, right? And they're different types. You got railroad, but TDUs also have their experts. Other generation facilities have their experts. There's researchers at universities. Wouldn't there be a more national push at the corporate level to be doing this?
If you look in some of the plans that have been submitted to the PUC, that's actually baked in there. The digital protective relays that
PUC
CenterPoint
has said
Energy.
that no TDUs are asking for money for resilient standards as outlined in Senate Bill 7, page 11, line 19.
So there's a reason for that as well. HB 2555 did not specify electromagnetic spectrum threats when it came to resilience initiatives by the utilities. So, and that was the deficiency of that bill.
555 allows TDUs to plan for and seek cost recovery on hardening electrical system, modernizing electrical system, cybersecurity, and physical security, all 4 of those.
And it did not say electromagnetic spectrum threats.
Hardening electrical systems and modernizing electrical systems.
So, and that may be a point that could be made is if it can be specified by the legislature that the utilities can include electromagnetic spectrum threat protection as part of that bill, then I think you would see more applications for that.
We'll get someone from TDUs to come talk to us about that. All right. Other questions, members?
I have a question.
Lois?
Thank you. You said
Sarah
20
Goldberg, excuse
cents
me.
per customer. You said
No, I said 80 cents, I'm sorry.
80 cents. Okay, so 80 cents. What's your testimony was just about at the end. What's the total cost, and is it the same as his, 500 million?
Well, that's, 500 million was for the neutral ground blockers. That's to handle the E3 heave wave. So that blocks the ground current from doing 2 things. The damage that it causes by thermal, putting DC current through a transformer, and the second thing is the harmonics. And the harmonics are what Senator Paul was alluding to, causing damage down the line to your distribution networks.
Does FERC do this?
This,
These various protective mechanisms for, you said they didn't based on the.
Now, so the Federal Electric, when we're talking NERC and FERC, in fact, I would direct you to the first page of my written testimony. What you'll see right there is the benchmark standard that was established by NERC for solar weather protection. This was done after the 1989 Hydro-Quebec storm. And FERC approved this. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission approved this standard. When it was developed, the utility industry through NERC used data, 40 years worth of data from Europe, that was very low solar activity. And that standard was designed in such a way that it would cause the industry to not have to do anything to protect against solar weather at the end of the day. And you can see that visually. If you look at it, the benchmark of 8 volts per kilometer, you scale down geomagnetic latitude. You look at Texas, it's 0.8 volts per kilometer of protection. What that means is when the utilities put that into their model, the model says we don't have to do anything about it. And so that's the problem, is that NERC has a standard that the federal government through FERC approved that doesn't require any protection. But the real threat, if you look at this graph, you see in the yellow, those are solar storms. 1921 railroad storm, we knew that there was almost 20 volts per kilometer field strength. We don't know, 1859, we didn't have magnetometers at the time to test, but we know that that was a strong solar storm. It created those ground-induced currents. We don't know how strong. What you see in red is what the Soviets achieved in 1960s with high-altitude nuclear EMP tests, 66 volts per kilometer.
Senator Colkers.
I just want to follow up on something, okay? So approximately 500 million, you were saying that's the ground.
it's 500. My calculation was more like 800 million to do all of that. It just depends whether you're adding in some of the breakers that might be destroyed in one of those events.
Okay, 4 billion nationwide, Mr. DeVore. I'm sorry, but I'm watching Doge and everything right now. 4 billion, which is a lot to all of us, is really a rounding error on a day-to-day basis in our large budget. And so one of the things, Mr. Chairman, I would say as I listen to this, and Senator Hall has been at this for since we've come into the legislature, I think in 2015 together, so a decade. I'm almost scared that we're like creating a committee to tell us what to do, and then we're 4 years out, blah, 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 blah. 10 years from now, we might have the protection. We might already have the solar catastrophe you're talking about. We might already have the attack, whether it's by one of our foreign adversaries. So the question being, a little along the chairman's line, why doesn't the industry act? Why doesn't the industry act? Is it not in their best interest? Are they waiting for a handout for us? And how quickly can we do this? Are we really 4 years out if we said today, Mr. Chairman, we're going to pass a bill, $500 million? I mean, in the Texas budget is not a stretch. It's
We're
not
gonna
a
ask them
stretch.
in the next panel for sure.
Okay.
Senator Kolkhorst, when Senator Hall first came to TPPF about this idea, I think, gosh, it's been a good 5 years. The very first question I asked him was, who pays, right? Because that always boils down to who pays for this stuff. And so what we're seeing here is, as was mentioned, the standards that we have in America are derived from European utilities history during a 40-year stretch when the sun was pretty quiescent. The challenge with some of the things that we know about regarding solar storms go back to 1859 and 1921, both periods of time when we didn't have a lot of electrification. In the 1859 storm, you had telegraph operators that were literally electrocuted as the systems were damaged by the intensity of this massive coronal mass ejection that came out of the sun. So that was a period of 62 years between 1859 and 1921. Now it's been 104 years since that 1921 event, and the world has been completely transformed by our use of electricity. In 1921, you didn't even have the rural electrification effort, right? That hadn't even kicked off in America yet. So we live in a different world, and utilities like to typically be compensated through their rates, through us ratepayers that pay for our electricity, pay for maintenance and things like that. And so they're not generally going to be in the mode of asking for charges that are going to go against their customers, especially your large industrial customers may resist. They don't, like, gee, why do I need this? I have my own backup generators, et cetera. So this is something that's been a long time in coming and developing consensus. And I think that one additional thing bears repeating, which is that these neutral blocking devices are not merely a cost. What they have proven is when you install them, they actually reduce maintenance requirements on the existing infrastructure by conditioning the electricity on those AC lines and the long distance DC lines, by conditioning that electricity such that there's less wear on the physical infrastructure in the existing system. So it's not like it's an expenditure that has no benefit beyond safety. And I think that's another interesting consideration.
So if we spent the money, we actually would save money and we would protect ourselves. It's pretty simple. I
Correct.
know it can't be that simple. Mr. Chairman, my last question would be that how quickly could we do these neutral blocking devices? Did you say 4 years, 5 years production?
No, it'd be much faster than that. The current company that does this will license that to anybody, that technology. So the big manufacturers could make that. It's fairly simple technology. It's using
Lieutenant
industry
Colonel.
standard components in it.
Lieutenant Colonel.
That's just it, exactly. Yes, ma'am. So the neutral ground blocking device has been developed, has been tested. In terms of ramping up the supply chain, because the supply chain does not currently exist for that one company to produce enough for the entire state of Texas immediately. They have a plan to license that, as Don said.
How many people make those devices?
Right now, and Primus, one company.
One company.
That's right. But like I said, they've got well, let me rephrase that. There are other manufacturers of the exact same technology in the People's Republic of China. Their patents have been ripped off, and we know that they're making them there. Here, we have only one company that's doing it,
Primus.
which will, yes, sir, Imprimis. And let me also just say that our coalition, our nonprofit, doesn't take a dime from any of those companies. This is for the public interest.
So, going along those lines, and we'll hear from Encore, we have ERCOT here too, but again, going back to the bill, it's an all threats bill. Y'all came up here, and you were focused on EMP, but I just keep going back to, at least my thought at least, that you could have 100 terrorists come across the southern border, properly stationed at various transformer stations or whatever across the United States. It'd be temporary damage, but it would be significant, at least for a while. Or you could have a bunch of kids in North Korea that are sabotaging from a cybersecurity standpoint. And then, or you could have a solar flare that causes massive disruption that is catastrophic for months or years. But what's the most likely, and what should we be focusing on as the legislature, as individuals? Where should we be putting our resources are finite, and our ability to do something is also finite. We cannot protect against every threat. The United States cannot. And being in the military, my father was too. We like to think we're 100% secure, but we all know that we're not. We saw that on 9/11. That was a small group of individuals. So what type of threats should the focus be of this commission? It appears, based on the testimony of the invited testimony, that is EMP focused. Am I wrong about that?
No, I don't think you're wrong at all that there would be a focus on EMP and evaluate it against the others. But that's for the commission to be able to
Exclusionary
rack and
focus?
stack.
To-
Not at all. No, sir, absolutely not. In fact, in terms of the People's Republic of China, the methods of sabotage it's not just physical sabotage. In the cyber domain, there's extraordinarily frightening things that can be done. Once that commission has clearances and can get briefed on that, then they're able to appropriately rack and stack what
Does the
those
federal
risks are.
government give clearances to state commissions, to individuals on state commissions, generally?
It's not a general rule, but I think that's what this commission would be seeking to start, and it needs to happen throughout the country, quite honestly, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, in response to your question, in my written testimony, I do mention the physical sabotage,
Glad you do.
in fact, increasing frequency of physical sabotage that we've been seeing.
Right.
One of the challenges that we have is that the high voltage transformers that carry about 70% of America's electricity currently have a 3 to 4 year backlog. The plurality of those transformers are made in the People's Republic of China.
Right.
The number 2 nation, depending on the year of manufacture you examine, is either Germany or South Korea. America makes a small fraction of the total. And unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, because of Texas regulatory rules, because of our tax system, if you were a utility and you decided to store a $4 million transformer, we're going to charge a property tax for the pleasure of storing it here in the state. It's inventory, right? So one of the things I recommended in my white paper, Texas Defense, about 18 months ago, was that the state of Texas should consider buying a small number of these critically important transformers and storing them in secure locations, probably on National Guard armory facilities around the state, so that we have a backup. And we could probably rotate the stock through so it doesn't get too old. Again, very modest amount of money. I mean, if they're $2.5 to $4 million a piece, you probably don't have to buy too many of them to have a decent backup, just to make sure that if something terrible were to happen, that you could replace them very quickly.
Sarah Hall.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's one of the reasons for the commission is to answer these questions. There's a lot of speculation on what can be done. We have met with power companies, with PUC and ERCOT together, talking about the issue of the power companies doing this and recovering the costs. My feeling is that the people are going to pay for it. There's no question. It's like everything else. People pay for the roads, they pay for the schools, they pay for the bridges. People will pay for it. If the government takes it on as starting to provide stuff, it's going to cost the people a whole lot more money than if we let the power companies that are closest to the people, that are most sensitive to spending, it will be the most efficient way to do it. They will spend the least amount of money and focus on getting the job done right, because they both have the responsibility for the cost and the implementation. And so the path we were going down, and had a couple of very successful meetings, I felt. I'm not going to speak for those there, but of the excuse me, of the discussions on how we could do this in a rolling way to be able to allow them to start recovering along the way on a rate recovery as opposed to waiting for it. It will be the least costly, and they will have both control of the cost and the technology for it. So it's a team effort, and I think maybe when Nim Kidd comes up, who's spent a lot of time with their report that they came out with, he'll be able to spread some additional light on that.
Thank you, Senator. Thank y'all very much.